All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Ovando Running Podcast. This is our second one, and today we have a special guest with me, my buddy Jason Jacobs. Jason, if you want to go ahead and give a little introduction to yourself, where you're from, you're living at right now.
Yeah, my name is Jason Jacobs. I'm originally from Windsor, California. Lived in San Diego for a while, and now I'm living in Reno for work for the next year. Um, I'm a runner. I like to view myself as a marathon runner, but I definitely kind of dabble in the ultra as well, and my goals are always kind of changing.
Awesome, man. So, just some achievements that I got for you is your marathon. I know you just did Santa Rosa and you qualified for Boston, which is awesome. Congrats on that. I got you at a 2:49:34. You got that sub 250. That's awesome, dude. I know you did Pirates Cove 24 hour because I was there. That was awesome. You sub 24 that, which was so sick to see you pushing. You've done a backyard ultra, which you've also got 100 miles in, which, that's not easy, man. That 4 hours every hour, just if you're not playing the game, you're out. So, and then also while you're all doing all this running and stuff, you're also a husband and a father, which is just awesome, man. It inspires me someday if I were to have a family, like just to know that I could still keep doing all this stuff. There's no excuses.
Definitely, I feel like that's exactly what it is, and that's kind of my biggest thing. Is I hate excuses. No excuses if you want, to get after a goal or really achieve something. I feel like you could find time. That's one thing I truly believe, and that's what I love about it. And that's another reason why the marathon has kind of been my distance of choice right now, is because I do love ultras, but it takes up so much time, and it's so much fun as well. But with the marathoning, I found it kind of really works with my schedule. I'm still able to train, be there for my daughter, be there for my wife, and be able to work as well. So
That's awesome, man. Yeah, just kind of, going back to the Santa Rosa, what were some like races leading up to Santa Rosa that you think were maybe key races or things where you learned a lot?
yeah, so when I knew that we were going to be doing this podcast, I was kind of thinking back, and I was really trying to dial into, like, at what point did I really want to try to qualify for Boston? Did I really want to go for sub 3, and where did it all start? Kind of made some notes of, like, my times and where I was at, but I really think that the turning point for me where I decided, okay, I want to go sub 3, I think I, might have a chance to qualify for Boston, was the Rock and Roll Marathon of 2024. I was running it. I got a 3:05:36. I remember afterwards, Oscar, he came up to me. We talked a little bit. He asked if maybe I'd be willing to run with San Diego Track Club, which I got into for a little bit, and that was fun. And I think that was kind of the point where I decided, I think I could do this, and I might be able to really achieve this goal. And that was in June of 2024. So I really started kind of working towards it then. And Santa Rosa 2024 is where I got my first sub 3. I really wanted to qualify for Boston at the time for my age group. Right now I fall in the fastest age group of qualifications. So it was just sub 3, you qualify for Boston. And at that race I ran at 2:59:58. I hit it by 2 seconds. I didn't even care that it was 2 seconds. I qualified. That's what I wanted. And one thing I really kind of wanted to touch on here too is, for people who don't really know about running or are just getting into running, is just because you qualify for Boston doesn't mean you're running Boston. They have cutoff times, they have all these rules, and at the time I didn't quite know that. When I ran it, I was like, oh, I qualified, I'm going to Boston. And then I realized, oh, no, you got 2 seconds, and they're really going to cut back on these times. From there, I didn't get into Boston, but, I still was able to say I qualified. So they switched the time and they cut it back by 5 minutes. So now I'm chasing, sub 2:55. I really thought I would be able to do it. And we can go back and touch on all these other races too. But it was the California International Marathon where I thought, okay, this is my next shot, you know. I worked really hard, and that was in December of 2024, and I finished with a 2:57:26. So I had missed it by the 2 minutes and 26 seconds. And I feel like at that point, where I was with running and everything, I was kind of overworking on speed. You know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort to be put in, and I had really wanted to hit 100 miles by that point, and I thought I was going to get into Boston, and this would just be an easy transition. But I remember after CIM, I said, you know what, I want to take a little break on speed, and I really want to start upping my mileage and see if I can do 100, you know, get into the ultra world, which is kind of where you come in, and, you know, you really helped me a lot with all of that.
Yeah, we'll come back to that, but I kind of just want to go back to the whole, you know, sub 3 thing, because you know, I just ran I stayed like actual trying a first marathon with you at OC, and I barely qualified. I went like 2:54:11 or something like that, so like seconds. And I would tell people they're like that knew the standard, or even that didn't, I would tell them, yeah, like I qualified and all that, and they're like, oh, so you're going to Boston? I'm like, probably not, but because, you know, I think the standard or the rule of thumb is like 5 minutes under, 5+ minutes under, and you should be good. I don't know if, correct me if I'm wrong, is that kind of the rule of thumb, or?
That's what I've been hearing, and, you know, I've been kind of learning as it goes, but I've looked at all the previous years, and it is so up and down. You know, some years there's huge cutoffs, the other times there's zero, and it all just depends on how many people are really applying to get in and how many people are actually qualifying, from my understanding. And I know from everything I've been reading and hearing about, right after COVID and the whole pandemic, you know, that's when running really took off as far as more people were qualifying, the cutoff times were getting more strict, and, you know, yeah, that leaves us to where we are now at the 2:55. I think before COVID, it was almost like sub 3:10 or sub 3:05, somewhere around there.
And I know I don't think they started the reinforcement of the new rule, but the downhill marathons or whatever, starting to have to add time to if there's like a certain amount of elevation loss. What do you think about that rule?
So I kind of liked it when I saw it, but for a selfish reason. I don't really have easy access to these downhill marathons, although, you know, like I've always would love to try it. I think Grandma's Marathon, I could be wrong, but I believe that's one of those downhills that I always hear about. And I'm a very strong downhill runner, I think, personally. So when I was considering qualifying, it was like, do I just try to get in one of those? And all, you know, running friends, I believe even you were like, nah, don't be one of those. Don't just purposely go after the downhill because it's easy. And I thought, you know, that's a good way to look at it. You know, you get that kind of gratification and accomplishment when you know that you're on, you know, not as easy as a course. And a lot of people would argue and say, you know, these downhill races are actually harder because they're just tearing up your quads and you're just getting beat up. I don't really know how I feel about it, but when I first heard it, I got excited because I was like, okay, this is going to give me an advantage. And then I heard it doesn't start until, you know, next year. So I was like, well, it doesn't affect my time this year, but it is what it is. And I need to keep an eye on what races I'm really trying to qualify at and see what the elevation is.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because I remember when we were talking about that, and I told you, I was like, dude, don't go and qualify. If it really comes down to it, don't do it. Just like put in the extra work. But you know what? At the same time, I guess we'll really just both have to go find out if running a downhill one is, you know, harder, as they say, because you're just pounding the quads. We should both go race one just for like, just, you know, see who's really right. Because in my opinion, I think, say for example, you get someone that runs one of those Revel ones or whatever, and they run like a 2:49, 2:50, and then you get someone that runs like a harder one, like rock and roll or something with, more elevation, and they're running like a 253 or something like that, and the person on the downhill one gets in. I think that's kind of lame. So yeah, we'll see if people get pissed off from it, but I think it's a good new reinforcement that's coming in. Kind of levels the playing field.
Yeah. And I've kind of found, races. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I found races too where it's like, the CIM in Santa Rosa where I'm like, okay, these kind of feel like my golden ticket, but, and then you hear other people where their golden ticket is exactly Grandma's Marathon or some of these downhills, so they just may have to reevaluate or just try to run it even faster. I don't, who knows,
Yeah, or, you could do that. If you want to get the sub 255, because I think it's like 5 minutes or whatever per certain elevation, it's like, okay, I guess you want to just go run like a 245 or something, like whatever. But yeah, for anyone that doesn't know, Jason, him and I like trained good amount in San Diego, and I think he's pretty well known in the running world down here, so shout out to him and our San Diego folks. Going back to the Santa Rosa, do you think there was any like key workouts or breakthrough workouts that you had where you were like, okay, you know what, this is going to give me the confidence that I'm going to hit my goal?
Sorry. I do, and I think that kind of I learned a lot. I learned a lot going into Santa Rosa, and the biggest thing that I found was a lot of this running is mental. And it's all getting there. Right now, I've been working with a coach throughout this process, and he's been a big help throughout that. Now, with that being said, I know, there's been phone calls with you. There was one day I called you, and I started to kind of be in a panic. I ended up moving to Reno for this year. I'm up in the altitude. These workouts are a little bit harder, and how my training goes is off of my time trials, so how fast I'm able to be doing these workouts and running. So every time I'd go out here in Reno and I'd try to hit a good time trial, I just wasn't hitting it. And, I'm in my head, I don't like to make excuses, but in my head I want to blame everybody else. I want to blame my workouts. I want to blame, where I am, why things aren't going right. And then I kind of had to reflect and sit back and realize, like, this is how it's going. I need to put in the work, and I need to make sure that, I guess where I'm trying to go with this is I need to be patient. And every time I ran a marathon, I feel like I was hitting a new PR, and I was just accelerating and moving up so quick. It was weird when things started to slow down. So what I did learn is to really slow down and trust the process. One of the hardest things for me is zone 2 running. These heart rate workouts, I'd get done, it'd be like a 40-minute easy run, and my score on there would just be horrible. I'd talk to my coach, and he's like, you're keeping your heart rate too high, and I'm like, I'm running at like an 8:30, 9-minute pace, and at the end of the day, he's like, it's not about the pace right here, this is a heart rate workout, this is what you need to do. And I guess my biggest takeaway from all that is to trust the process, really run slow on those slow runs, and where the work really comes in is, for me personally, I do my speed work on Thursdays, I do my long runs on Sundays. That's kind of how my schedule's really worked out, so those are going to be the 2 days where most of that work is happening. With that being said, I feel like you just need to keep putting in the work day in and day out, and that's just the hard part about it. Sometimes I'll go 2 months and I don't see any progress, but I still wake up every day, I still put in the same work, I still give it my 100%, and really hope for the best. So I think for Santa Rosa, what I really learned was just slowing down, trusting the process, and realizing that I don't need to go out and run these 20-mile runs at race pace to get to where I want to be. Everyone has their own ways of working out, everyone has their own ways of getting it, and for me, I'm over here watching everybody else. And I learned to really just kind of set back and, okay, trust the process, trust what my schedule is, and really listen to the coach. So it took me a minute to get there, and I feel like I am definitely getting better at that.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, like looking back at myself too, I think for me personally, I've learned, like you were saying, just like a lot of patience with running. And I mean, even I was telling some of my athletes for cross country that some of them are starting to get to a point where they're plateauing and they're hitting like there's the same times like you were talking about with your marathon. Maybe you're taking a couple seconds off and they're getting frustrated, and I just try and tell them like, hey, if everyone was hitting and improving every single race, like everyone would be a pro athlete. You know what I mean? Like that's what I feel like separates, the ones that really want it and then the ones that are just kind of like, I don't really want this. Like the delayed gratification, they're not getting that instant, oh, I got it. Like they're willing to keep putting in the work and wait for that progress to show up. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah. I mean, and it is so true too. It's like, one of the hardest things to do is, with whether you're being in the gym or whether you're running, is waking up every single day, putting in the work, giving it your all, and not seeing any progress or anything. And, the hardest part is just waking up every day and doing it over again and over again and over again. And it's like, your brain will want to tell you to stop or let you know that you're not improving, but exactly what you said, it's like you feel like you got this plateau, but if it was easy, everybody would be doing it and everyone would be, getting after it. So that's one thing I love about running, is really just the constant grind, the discipline, all of these like short videos and clips you see on Instagram. I'm such a sucker for those, like, what do you do when you're tired? Let's see what you do. Get up, go again. This is what gets me up in the morning, when I have these early morning workouts. I'm waking up at 4 a.m, waking up at 4:30, and my brain's telling me, oh, just stay in bed. It's like, no, this is what we do now. This is non-negotiable. This is just, it's discipline, fuck your motivation, fuck your tired body, like all these videos you're seeing. It's like, this is what we do now. And I feel like in running, that's what's really kind of gotten me to the level I need to be at, is just holding that standard. And it's like, it cracks me up because it's all these damn videos I'm watching. I think it's like Tom Brady video or something who said that, but I'm like, it's true. You don't need motivation. It's just about discipline. And you wake up, you're sick, still gonna get after it. You wake up, you're tired, still gonna get after it. You have a meeting, wake up earlier. You've got a family event, wake up, or like, you can always find time. And for me, my biggest pet peeve is excuses. I hate people with excuses. I hate when people ask how to do something and then, oh, I don't have enough time in the day. And, oh, well, what time are you waking up? 8:30. And what time are you going to bed? 11. So what are you doing from 10 to 11? Well, I'm watching my show. Okay, well, cut out that show. Get up at 6. There's always going to be a way around it. And I think a lot of people have excuses, and, that it's not going to help you.
Dude, 100%. I agree with that. I love, you're getting me pumped up, man. Like, I already did my run today, and I'm already like, yeah, I'm about to go do like another 10 miles today. But yeah, I definitely agree with like the excuse things, and sometimes I'll even, if I'm, in a heavy week of training, like you were saying, like my mind will start making those excuses like, you could just take one day off, it's not gonna hurt, just go sit in the jacuzzi for whatever instead of going on your run. But it's like, once you start breaking that cycle and you start feeling sorry for yourself, as some people say, it's like, that's when you can start going down a spiral, especially if you're not like have a coach or a training plan and you're just kind of like doing your thing. If you're not super disciplined, it's like you could start going downhill from there.
Yeah, it's so true. It really is. And it's like, a good example of it was the other day. I woke up, I wasn't feeling the best. I got my easy run in. I knew I had a big workout the next day, and instead of being like, well, I'm not feeling good, maybe I should sleep in, I thought, no, I'm gonna wake up when I usually wake up. I'm gonna get this done. Don't tell yourself you're sick and you'll get over it. And I woke up that morning at 4 a.m. I got my fueling in. It's like 4:40. I get out of the door, 10-minute warm up. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling good. I start my first interval, and I believe it was like 6 or 7 intervals at race pace. I can't remember exactly what it is, but I'm 3 minutes in, and all of a sudden I'm coughing, snot's pouring out my nose, and then I really had to realize, like, okay, now there's a difference here. I know I'm sick. I know that I tried to put in the effort. Let's slow down the pace. Let's still get some mileage in, but get home and, figure this out. And it's like, that's what kills me, is like, at least I didn't make excuses and I tried to get out there and make it happen. And then it's like, there's a difference between excuses and then just what's actually happening. It's like, okay, my body's sick. I'm not able to do this. I still was able to get in, 4 miles. I was able to get in a good try, and that's what helps me sleep at night. It would have killed me if I woke up and was just like, no, I'm sick, I'll just take today off. I think just showing up no matter what is what's really important. And that's another thing that I'm really working on is, everyone cracks up because when you talk to some of these runners, like, oh, David Goggins, and it's like, that used to be my mentality. If this was last year, I would have pushed through the whole time, been coughing, sick, not slowed down and kind of taken a moment. And I'm realizing as I'm maturing with running, like, okay, how I'm really going to improve is still listening to my body, not making excuses, still showing up, but understanding, when I need to call it, and at least just being aware of that. And I'm still working on it, but I feel I'm getting better with that.
Dude, yeah, 100%, like, listening to your body, because, like you were saying, yeah, you can run through, push through, like, the sickness and stuff, but then it's also, you got to look at, like, the damage it's going to do after, because you're probably putting yourself into a deeper hole. So, yeah, I think that's huge, is just, like, being aware of your body, listening to it, knowing when to, like, tone back, just get those base mileage in to keep your base going. Sick, man.
And I did think of something else as well. So I guess, like, for me, what I learned about Santa Rosa, and it wasn't even necessarily like a certain workout, but I knew this race was really important to me, and I knew how hard I had been working towards it. So I had cut out maybe 4 days before the race, got off work. I made sure I have a few days after the race, and my wife, she's super supportive. My parents are super supportive. I always say I'm from Windsor. Windsor and Santa Rosa are right next to each other, a couple minutes apart, and that's where my parents live. So when I went down there, I told them, I said, hey, I'm going to come down 4 days before the race. I don't want you guys to think I'm being weird or anything, but I'm going to kind of be in my own lane. I'm going to be a little quiet. I'm going to be, they put this tiny home on their property for us when we come visit. So I said, I'm going to be napping a lot in the tiny home. And what I found was really just locking in those few days before without all the chaos around me really helped me get there. It was kind of like what was going on in my head was I knew I'd put in the work. I knew everything was there, and nothing that I was going to do was going to change, what happened on race day. So I really, exactly what we were just talking about, I listened to my body, and, I was making sure that I was napping throughout the day, that I was just being calm and relaxed those few days coming up to it. I made sure that I was getting 8 hours of sleep, and before a lot of these races, I'd never done that before, and I truly think that gave me a big advantage. Being here in Reno and training in the altitude definitely is going to help, but I didn't realize, I think it was like day 2 or 3, like right before the race, I just remember waking up and feeling like this different person, and I was like, it's crazy what sleep, rest, and nutrition can do if you really, hone in and focus on that, and you're just kind of eating the same things, you're focusing, and your sleeping routine is the same, you're getting those hours in. And I think that some athletes kind of forget about that. We got a crazy world, like a life going on. We're working all the time. We've got family, we've got friends, we've got activities we're supposed to do. It's hard to just really slow down and focus on yourself in that sense. Like in my head, I felt like I was being a little selfish, but I was like, I just need everyone to leave me alone for these few days, and I just want to sleep and rest and take it easy. And I truly think that was a big help.
Dude, it's funny you bring up the whole sleep thing, because now as I'm starting to, get a little bit older, I can really feel it if I don't get like at least 6.5, 7 hours of sleep. Like, I'll wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh man, like I didn't sleep that good. And then compared to a night where I'll get like at least 7 hours. It's just like, yeah, sleep is huge, man. Like, and the thing about sleep too is it's essentially free. You're not having to pay for like an expensive supplement or any like recovery gear or anything. It's like, no, you can just, go lay down and let your body rest. So yeah, that's huge, man.
And I mean, and your body's such an amazing thing. When you're sleeping, you're just healing and getting stronger, and it's crazy.
Dude, exactly. All right, let's go on to like actual race day of Santa Rosa. What do you usually fuel with like before the race? What's your go-to?
Yeah, so another thing that my coach really has me working with too is, a lot of people talk about the carb loading and, doing everything the day before. I start everything 2 to 3 days before. So as I mentioned, the 3 days, before I was focusing on rest, focusing on that. About 2 days before the race, I was really, locking in on my diet. I made this simple pasta, grilled chicken, very little sauce on there. I wrote down kind of like notes of what I was eating because I always forget. Just if I was doing pizza, margarita pizza, super light cheese. I try to stay away from really a lot of sugary stuff, a lot of fatty stuff. I'm just looking for more of those carbs. Bananas, applesauce. I was doing a shit ton of peanut butter and jellies with just the lightest bit of peanut butter, the lightest bit of jelly, but the day before the race, I think I sat down that afternoon and ate 6 peanut butter and jellies, like, just for lunch, and it was, like, mostly just bread, but, had a little spread on there. And then jumping into race day, and for that was kind of the 2 days leading up, is I would wake up, I would kind of just eat pancakes, maybe a little bit of syrup. Actually, those 2 before, I did honey. I just love honey on the pancakes. It helps. If I'm doing sandwiches, I keep it very simple. I don't do any vegetables, any lettuce, anything like that. I try to stay away from any fibers. So I was doing more of just like a simple sandwich. Dinner, exactly like I said, just noodles. That I found these things, I don't know, they work for me, but the rice cakes, the little cinnamon apple ones,
Okay.
oh my gosh, I was just smacking on those throughout the day, same as just pretzels. And then on race morning, I woke up and I've probably eaten the most I've eaten before any marathon. Like, when I was telling people what I was doing, they were looking at me like, what the hell? Like, why? But race morning, I woke up and I drank an electrolyte drink. I had my BCAAs in there. I forget the brand I use, but there's just this mix I use. I drink Morton 320. I had 2 pieces of toast with just light jelly on there. I had an applesauce packet, and I had 2 bananas. And this is all 2 hours before the race. So I made sure to wake up 2.5 hours before the race, and I ate that first thing when I woke up. So I was like, all right, now my body's got, like a little over 2 hours to digest this. Let's now sit down, rest, get my stretching in, and let my body do its thing. Right before the race, so an hour before the race, I made sure to take an Imodium. And then I like B12 and magnesium, so I just, took my little tablets of those before. And then 15 minutes before the race, I did a caffeinated Morton. Now, with all that being said, for Santa Rosa, I don't usually get nervous before races anymore. I used to. Every time I would be nervous before every race, and for the first time in a long time, it came back at Santa Rosa. So before I took that Imodium, I was feeling sick. I was kind of getting the nervous gags, and I threw up a little bit, and I told myself, okay, you ate a shit ton. Don't worry about it. And then 10 minutes later, I had another big throw up, and then in my head, I'm like trying to calculate. I'm like, okay, I probably still have 1 piece of toast, 1 banana in me, and, half of the drink. Like, I'm going to be good. So that's what I did, but I say that because I don't necessarily recommend that for anybody else. I do think that I overate on race morning, and it just happened to work out,
Yeah, well, it played out to your advantage, so you'll just have to try some, maybe eating a little less on the next one. Yeah, going
Definitely
into the race, if you want to like break down like the first half. We could just kind of talk about that. I don't know if you want to do like 5Ks or you could just talk about the first half marathon. Like, boom, gun goes off.
Yeah, so as I was lining up, this was, I believe, my third year running Santa Rosa. So I had asked my dad, hey, can you drop me off in the morning? So I make sure that my mornings are just very easygoing, not stressful. My wife, she was like awesome the night before. She told me, she said, I'm gonna go stay in the guest room in the house. You take the tiny home to yourself. We don't want to wake you up, and we want you to be able to get ready in the morning. Typically, I'm, tiptoeing around in the morning, trying to not make noise. So that right there was just a big help. I woke up, did my breakfast thing, got dropped off, and as I'm sitting at the start line, I start asking people because I see a 3-hour pacer, and I'm like, okay, is there a 2:55 pacer? Anything? And everyone was like, no, like that's crazy. And I'm like, what do you mean that's crazy? That's like the Boston qualifying time. And then I heard one kid, I looked over and I said, are you going sub 2:55? And he was like, yeah, I think I'm going 2:45. And I was like, okay, I just want to make sure I'm in the right area. If you're sitting over here saying you're going 2:30, I need to back up. So gun goes off. I head out, and for the first mile, I didn't really care. I knew, obviously, don't blow up on the first mile, but at Santa Rosa, you really need to find your place. And I don't think it's just Santa Rosa. I think in any of these big marathons, that first half mile is just really settling in and finding your pace. So I take off a little hot. I want to say, I wish I would have pulled up my splits. I probably still can, but I was around, I think, a 6:15 pace, and I thought, okay, this is feeling good. Rolling into the second mile, same thing. And then right after about a 5K, I just see this group, and I'm just like in awe. Like I had a friend who was running it. He was on the San Diego track club with me. And he was running the half, so he tells me, a bunch of these people from I want to say it was Milestone, one of the run clubs in San Diego, had gone out, and I see this pack running, and it was just insane. There's a couple girls, there's like 5 guys, and they just look so comfortable. It looks like they're running at like every same step, every same rhythm, and it was just so cool to watch. It felt like I was watching elites. They are. So I decided just to kind of hang behind them, and I was looking at my watch, and I keep seeing 6:15, and I'm like, okay, this wasn't really the plan, but I'm feeling good. I think, the altitude in Reno must have been good. Let's hang on as much as possible. So about mile 6, I was a little nervous, but I kind of got up with the group, and I just said, hey, are you guys, going sub 250? And somebody looked over to me, and he was nice enough. He's like, I think that this group's going 245. And I said, okay, I'm going to try to hang with you guys for a little bit. So I hung with them till around mile 9, and everything was just feeling great. And I just kept telling myself, like, okay, Jason, like, be careful, like, you might be blowing yourself up. You might regret going out this hot. But I thought, your body, really focus in and listen. When I dropped off around mile 9 or 10, I never get side cramps, and all of a sudden I just get this side stitch, and I see them going off, and I don't know, in races it's always the worst when you're like holding on to a group and they just start to fade. But I kept telling myself, you weren't planning with hanging with them, you already hung with them for around 9-10 miles, like, don't worry about it. So side stitch gets worse, and I start to take a couple steps, and my brain is just going, and all of a sudden, someone comes up behind me and fucking slaps my ass, and like in the moment, and the guy just is like, let's go, and like in the moment, it was like so unexpected. So I didn't say a word, and I knew, like, he was just trying to get me motivated and help, so I started running, and now I'm running alongside him for a minute. I don't even say a word. I just put my knuckles out, give him a bump, and then after, like probably like a minute and a half, I just said, thanks, and he's like, yeah, keep it up, like you're going strong. I kind of got past that side stitch, and kept going. So I even, like, took a screenshot. I was looking at the photos, and one of the photos, I saw he was in front of me, and I was like, oh my god, like, that's the guy, like, So everything started to kind of feel a little bit better until I got to the halfway point, and then it was like, okay, let's just focus in on this pace. I want to say I was slowing down to around like 6:20ish, maybe even more. But I was comfortable. I thought, you're going way past what you were predicting you were going to. Just hold on, and you have a lot of room for error. I hate when people say like they have a perfect race. I'm sorry, but I just feel like things are going to come up during the race no matter what. That's how it's going to go, and you should just expect it and be ready. So what I fuel with during the race is I brought Morton gels. So my game plan was every 30 minutes I wanted to do one. I brought 2 extras, and I made sure that it was like caffeinated regular, but I brought an extra caffeinated. I run with a belt, and I have a little water bottle on my back. And during marathons, I like to have a handheld as well. The reason I do this is, most people feel comfortable with hitting these water stations, but there's been too many times where things go wrong, you miss a water station, and it really messes with my mental. So when I do these, I'm like, okay, I have everything I need on me. If I hit an aid station for a water or an electrolyte drink, then it's just a plus. So everything was feeling good. About mile 10 or 11, I still had water bottle in my handheld, so I made sure to just finish that off, throw it in my little back pocket. Sometimes I'll just throw the bottle to the side. It all depends. So right around, I want to say mile 20, I feel like that's where the race really started for me. At Santa Rosa, it really cuts into some narrow pathways, and that's where you meet up with the half marathon. I could be wrong. I want to say around mile 22 is where the half marathoners come in. And I knew it from previous years. The year prior, I was right behind the second place female, and there was a biker pacing her, and all of a sudden the biker goes into the water station to grab a cup, and it got in my way, and it derailed kind of my whole race right there. Threw me for a loop for a second. I was able to get back at it. So this year I was ready for it, or at least I thought I was. But at mile 22, when I hit that pack, it was just, I was holding on for dear life, honestly. Like, I was just trying to scream on your left, right behind, anything I could. And, it's so hard because I appreciate everybody out there. We're all out there for the same reason. We're challenging ourselves. It's a battle against ourselves, and it's hard work no matter what pace you're at. But it can be frustrating when you're trying to qualify and you do have a little bit of people not at the pace, you need to be at. So there were a few like shoulder bumps, a few bumping into people, and I'm just doing my best to just hold on. And right around mile 24, I started to get really excited, but that's where that self-talk came in. Like, everything in my body was just telling me, stop, just quit, and it was like that point in the race where I just had to start telling myself, the pain that you're feeling right now, you're not going to remember once this race is over. And the regret you're going to feel on not hitting this time is going to be far worse than any feeling, you can have. So I started to kind of get some cramps. And when I bumped into a few people, I've told you before, I call it the pirate leg. I started to get the pirate leg. And I'm over there just hobbling as fast as I can. And I'm going. I remember when I hit mile 25, I kind of started to celebrate a little bit, and then I told myself, like, yo, the race is not over until you see that finish line. So, like, time to put on your big boy pants and stop getting excited. Like, anything could go wrong right now. I ended up really just holding on and pushing through. I ended up dipping into my extra gels. I want to say I was at about 600 milligrams of caffeine at this point.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, like, for the extras that I had brought in that were caffeinated, I wasn't even rotating. Like, throughout the race, I just started just doing caffeine. Like, anytime I'm like, I just need anything to hold me here. And then I just saw the finish line, and it was it was game time. You always tell me at any finish line, you're like, dude, you got to give it all you got, and that's exactly what I did. And years prior, like, I never know how the finish is gonna go. Like, am I gonna cry? Am I not? I think when I first got my sub 3, I think I shed a couple tears. I was super proud of myself. When I got the 257 at CIM, it was like such a mixed emotion, because at the finish line I just started kind of bawling, but it was because I didn't hit my goal. But then I was like proud of myself because I hit a PR. So I just remember in my head thinking, like, what is this finish line gonna be like? And right when I got through that line, my hands just went up, and I just screamed at the top of my lungs, like, fuck yes! And that's the photo of me with my hands up. Like, I was not worried about any cameras on this race. I was not worried about any photos. So to see those photos after, I love to see that, like, happiness, and there were no tears. I was just beyond stoked. I was just so proud of myself. I knew, everything I had put into that training had paid off, and it kind of hit me after too that it's so, like, cliche and everybody says it, but it's not hitting the achievement, it's building up to that goal. And I just started reflecting on all the training, all the hard days, all the days I didn't want to get up but still did, all the days that I wasn't hitting my workouts and I felt like there's no way I ever would be able to get there. And it just hit me, like, it's not actually hitting the goal, but it was just the whole journey. And I hear people say it, and I'm like, oh, whatever, but it's just so true.
Man, yeah, that just sounds like a day full of just emotions and, like you were saying, problem solving, essentially. Like, with the side stitch, you've never had that happen. And then the infamous pirate leg. I mean, were you kind of expecting that in your mind? Were you expecting the pirate leg, or was it in your mind at all when you were thinking or, like, running? Or
So any marathon I've actually tried to race, it's come up around mile 22, and in my head, I always thought when I was getting into ultras, like, oh, this is perfect, because when I'm out here running 50-mile races, 100-mile races, then my body's just going to get stronger, and these issues aren't going to come up. I'm going to hit mile 22, and my body's going to be like, oh, shit, he's still got, 70, 80 miles to go. But that's not the case. It happens every time around mile 22, 23. And I realized I didn't quite go over exactly what I was holding on me. So I had my back belt on with the water bottle, with my electrolytes. I had my handheld electrolyte, and then in my front little pack, I didn't bring my phone. I just had my watch. But in my front pack, I had my gels and cramp pills. They're the Highland cramp pills, and then Arnica, that's what it is. Arnica pills as well. So I had those with me just in case. And how they kind of work is they're the Highlands one. They dissolve in your mouth. My coach always lets me, just let it dissolve, because then it's going to, like, hit your system a little bit faster. So at mile 22, like, when that was happening, I twisted open my little thing I had, and I was, like, trying to, like, shove them in my mouth. And I think I got, like, 3 in my mouth. And then it was, like, mile 23 or 24 that exactly I just was clinging for dear life when my body was telling me to stop, and I'm shoving more of those cramp pills in my mouth. And luckily I wasn't even looking. I just was kind of, like, throwing them back. I think I brought, like, 10 of them, and it shows, like, not to exceed, like, 4 or 6 in a day. But I, I've gone over it with my coach before, and, it's not the end of the world if you have to take more than, 4 or 5, whatever. So I think that helped a little bit. So to answer your question, yes, I did expect that it may come up, but I was really hopeful that it wouldn't. And I did have my backup. I don't know if they help or not, but I think they did. So I would have killed to watch a video of me trying to do that, because, I'm trying to fight through a crowd and throwing these pills in my mouth. People are probably like, what is he doing? I've never been a big salt capsule kind of guy unless I don't have my electrolytes and there's only water. So yeah, there was that.
Yeah, dude, I remember you always talking about it, because you've done a bunch of marathons. Before I did OC, you told me, and dude, it happened to me at, like, mile, I want to say 22, 23. And I just remember, because I was like, yeah, it probably won't happen to me, because I've never had that happen in a race. And then when it happened to me, I remember, dude, first thing that shot through my mind was you telling me about it. You're like, dude, the pirate leg right in like the 20s. And man, dude, it sucks. Because at that point, too, you're thinking your race is over. Like, that's the first thing that went through my mind is I'm going to have to literally walk the last 4 miles to the finish. So, well, man, props on pushing through all that. That's freaking awesome. You got your goal done. Yeah, I remember talking to you also too about, dude, what shoes you're gonna wear, and we were just kind of going back and forth. Like, I know you like the Elite ones. I know you tried some Meta Speeds. What did you finally go with?
So that was probably one of the hardest decisions, but I guess where I had to get mentally was, okay, I have 2 shoes in mind. I wrote it down because I honestly always forget the names of these, but what was it? It was the Rocket X3 is what I ended up going with, but the Endorphin Elite is what I had previously run both of my sub 3s with. So, yeah, it was a challenge. About a month before, my coach recommended that I get them. I had different gift cards. I had different credits on different accounts, and I was, like, just really looking for any shoe that I could get. And I decided to give it a shot. So I got them. Wonder what the date was. Oh, on August 2nd. So Santa Rosa was August 24th. On August 2nd, there was a half marathon in Truckee. And I talked to my coach, and he was like, that might be a good boost. Like, go out there, don't hurt yourself, but go have fun and see if you like the shoes. So I went and ran them in that half marathon. I thought everything went well. I had different cramps in my legs than I ever had before with the Rocket X3. So after discussing with my coach after, he's like, what calf workouts are you doing? And we got to the point where it was like, okay, I just need to build up some strength there, and the shoes should be fine, because everything else felt good about them. The Endorphin Elites, I love them. They feel fast. They work for me, but they are really firm. What I do like about the Hokas is it's really got that cushion. It's got kind of a bounce, and you feel like you're going fast. There's some race day shoes where I don't really feel like it's doing much. It's no different than a daily trainer. And then you get shoes like the Endorphin Elite, the Cielos, the Rocket X, Vaporflies. I put those on and I feel like, I'm in like a cheat mode. I'm just flying. So I ended up going with the Rocket X, Rocket X3, and I think it was a good choice, and I'm excited to try them again. I think that's one I'm going to use on my next marathon for my next big goal.
Nice, dude. And just for anyone that doesn't know, I have the Rocket X2 right here. I think it kind of looks maybe like similar outsole, bottom similar, but like I think they did a whole revamp on the upper, because like there's not really much of a heel counter right here. And I know I checked out the X3, and it looks like their heel is like way more cushioned. So yeah, this is just the older one.
It looks like
I love this shoe. It's awesome.
I need to try that one. I don't know if I have tried it. I know you've let me try a lot of your shoes when I'm deciding, because same size, it ends up working out.
Yeah. Well, shoot, man. You got any, like, say someone that kind of getting fairly new to running, or they're, say, coming from ultra running, and they're like, man, I think I could hit, BQ. What are, like, maybe a couple tips that you got for them?
Yeah, I think is really just trust the process, show up every day, put in the work. On the days where things aren't going right, you gotta really learn how to brush it off, and have a game plan. I think that when people wake up, and I could be wrong, because I see guys who have no game plan. They just wake up and do it, and they're way faster than me. They're over here running 2:30 marathons, and I'm like, what's your game plan? And they're like, I kind of wake up and wing it, and I'm like, how? But I think sticking to a plan, making sure you have a nutrition plan, and really mentally, getting there yourself. I think that when I first started running, I think my first marathon was like a 3:58, and I was stoked. And I remember OC Marathon, it was my first marathon. I was a nervous wreck going into it. I did not know if I would finish. I was watching every single YouTube video, TikTok out there, and I just was like, oh my gosh, is this going to happen? Never in a million years would I think that I would go sub 3. And I think that, over time, I just built that belief and really telling myself. And, I think that you had a big part in that as well. I remember talking to you about going sub 3 when we were talking about OC and BQ. And in my back of my head, I was just second guessing everything. And I didn't know if it would, if it could actually be done. And you're like, no, dude, you can do it. We could do this. Let's go send it. And I just remember being like, his confidence is fucking way higher than mine right now, but let's give this a shot and see what I can do. And I truly think that if you put in the work and you put in the training, I believe in manifesting. And it sounds crazy, but it's like the 2 days leading up to Santa Rosa, I really, when I was sitting there like resting and napping, like it sounds crazy, but I was sitting there and I was visualizing every single mile by mile in my head what pace I was going to be at, what I would be feeling like, and how it was going to be going. And I just ran this over in my head for a couple days before the race. And then on race day when you wake up, it was almost like I just got to shut my brain off, but it already knew what it needed to do and what it was going to do because I was telling myself that. And it's easy to say that, and I'm not just telling everyone, oh, visualize it and it's going to happen. You got to put in the work, but once you know that you've put in the training and you've put in the time, it's going to come. And, it might not be tomorrow, it might not be in the next year, it might not even be in the next 2 years, but if you keep working on a plan and you're building a schedule, whether it be on, the Nike Run app, Garmin, you find a coach, you find friends, there's so many resources out there that can help you build these plans to reach your goal. And like I was saying, sometimes you do hit a plateau, and there were times where I just wasn't getting faster and I just didn't understand why, but I stayed patient, I showed up and kept working every day towards it, and eventually you will get there. And I think my biggest advice is just stay consistent and really try to put in that work and watch how you talk to yourself. I used to be so hard on myself and beat myself up and tell myself what I could and couldn't do. And then when I started to really believe and tell myself these things, then it started to happen, and it was crazy. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to be nicer to myself and really believe that these things can happen, because when the belief is there and the work's being put in, it's bound to happen.
Dude, yeah, and yeah, everything you hit on, amazing. And it's just like, dude, I feel like doubt really only starts to get dangerous when you start to doubt yourself. And it's like, as soon as that thought starts going in your mind, like, oh, I can't do this, and you start feeding it, it's just terrible. You just kind of gotta mentally shut that down. And then dude, going off of talking about manifestation and your visualization, huge believer in that. When I used to swim when I was younger, I had a teammate that he would literally sit under he would cover his head with his towel, put his headphones on, and he would just visualize the whole meet, all his races, going up to the blocks, everything. And I'm like, I still hold on to that now, and I do that with my running, not to the extreme he did, but I would just think about where I'm at on the course so much that I actually will have dreams about the next race that I'm going into. And yeah, I think it's definitely huge, because I mean, if you're super motivated to hit your goals, you kind of got to be I think obsessed with it to some point. Go ahead.
That is it. I was gonna say, it's so true. Obsession is literally what it is. These it goes back into these clips I see, and I tell you, it's like obsession beats talent every day, every time, over and over again. You know, you can be talented, you can be skilled, but the ones who are obsessed typically end up on top. And it sounds funny and it's ridiculous, and you know, I've always had a really addictive personality, and now that's what running has done to me. You know, like I eat, breathe, and sleep this. Like, you know, the first thing I think about when I wake up is going on my run. What I think about before I go to sleep is running. And you know, some people would say, wow, that's just too much and that's crazy, but right now it's just what I'm really enjoying. And it's like one of these addictions where I know, you know, I, you know, could be hurting my body in some senses, you know, maybe if I'm overworking or doing things, but I would much rather be doing this than a lot of other things I could be doing. And it's true, you know, like my brain is always going, and it's mostly mostly about running. Yeah.
Same way, man. There was one more thing that I actually thought of was, so talking back to like, you know, you've done a 50 miler, sub 24, backyard. Do you think that like ultra running has helped you achieve like your marathon goals, and like vice versa, marathon helped you with your ultras?
So I think that's a good question. I think that they've helped in different ways, but maybe not how I expected them to help. Mentally is where it really helped the most. As I kind of mentioned before, like, oh, I'm always getting this pirate leg at 22, 20s. You know, I thought that running these 50s and 100s would just make my body this tank where, you know, if I'm running that mileage, how could I even cramp at that? But what I told my parents going into Santa Rosa, and I told my wife, is I just said, you know, I'm going into this imagining it being the hardest thing that I have ever done. Now, with that being said, when I did both of my hundreds, I told myself the same thing. But a marathon is just so different. You're putting in just as much effort and, you know, as you would in a 100-mile race, but compacted into 3 hours. And I truly believe that. Like, if you were to ask me right now what was harder, running your 100-mile race or, you know, running the sub 250, I honestly couldn't tell you. Like, they both are so hard in different ways, and that's what kills me. Like, I'll just flat out say it, like, I love ultra running a lot more, because I like, you know, the community. I love just being out there. I love the suffering. I love breaking my mental down. I love breaking my body down. There's just something about it, pushing your body to that limit, and the endorphins you get and the gratification you get. And then, you know, it runs into marathoning. You know, I still do get the gratification and I still do get this, but it's a whole different gratification, if that makes sense. I'm like, okay, I know I put in the work. I know I achieved this, but they're just such different sports. It's so crazy to think about. So if you want to like really get into it, I would say, okay, yeah, I guess marathon running has helped me with ultra running because maybe I've hit a little bit faster on that backyard ultra. Every loop I was coming in first. Everyone was telling me I was going too fast. Everybody was telling me I needed to slow down. Reflecting back and looking back, I think I handled it perfect. I had like, you know, 10, 15 minutes to just chill and drink, eat food, sit back. And I think that the marathon running really gave me that advantage at that race. As far as ultra running helping in marathoning, it really helps with the mental. It helps me know that, you know, I've done way bigger distances than what I'm doing now. Maybe not at the same effort, but I know that my body can handle it. So yeah, I do think that they help with each other, but you know, it's so hard going back and forth because in 2024 I was working really hard for this BQ, and then when, you know, February I did the 100, and then March I did the other 100, it really slowed me down. It was like kind of depressing going back into trying to train for a BQ because everything I had worked for on speed was gone, and I was like, how? Where does it go? Like, and then I just really had to build that back up. I know there's people like you know, you could go run a 100-mile race, and then 2 weeks later I see you out there doing like a 5-minute mile, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how is that even possible? So I think that it's really different for each individual person. But for me, I think it was just two separate goals, and they both affected each other in different ways. I think that running and training for those hundreds held me back a little bit from the BQ, but it was just as fun building that speed back up because it's just back to work, grinding every day, and putting in the miles, putting in the speed. Yeah, I hope that's an okay answer. Yeah.
No, dude, that was perfect. I think you explained that perfectly. Like, yeah, I agree. It's two complete, like, yeah, it's the same running, same sport, but it's like two different. Yeah, it kind of is two different sports. I just tell people it's kind of like, how do you want your pain dosed? Do you want it fast and quick? Okay, go do something shorter. Do you want it slow but gradual? All right, go do an ultra. That's how I tell them.
Yeah. It's crazy the differences, and I love that I'm able to be in both because I know people try to, divide and say, oh, you got your road runners and you got your ultra runners. And I think that right now where I'm at in my running career, I guess you could say, is I am a marathon runner right now. And I am looking forward to getting back into ultras, and I think I may make it a goal, at least hit one ultra a year. But right now I'm trying to focus on what the next step is, and I think that where I'm at with this qualifying, I really would like to run all the world majors, and then after I run all the world majors, I think it's going to really be trying to get into more of like competitive ultra running like you are. I would love to show up and really try to run a fast 100 or a fast ultra. Both of the ultras I've done were looped races. And there's a big difference from that and what you're doing. You're going out here and you're running from point to point 100 miles. I'm running in circles for hundreds of miles, and there's lots of different things to take there.
For sure, man. So I think you said you got CIM. Is that your next like goal that you're going after?
Yeah. So
like race wise.
Yeah, when I finished Santa Rosa and I got that BQ by 2 seconds, I looked at my wife and I said, I'm never doing that again. Like, that was miserable. That was not fun. Like, I don't want to do this again. I gave it a couple weeks, and then I went back to CIM, and I think that is kind of what had to do with, like, my emotions at the end was you put so much effort into there, and you think, like, okay, once you hit your goal, you're done. So I guess the reason I'm saying that is when I crossed the finish line at Santa Rosa this year, I knew there was more in the tank. I knew that this was something that I definitely wanted to go after again, and I haven't really like posted it on social or told too many people, but the second I crossed that finish line, my head went straight to sub 245 at CIM. Sub 245 no matter what. I know I can do it. I know it's going to happen. Things might come up, but yes, I'm going sub 245. And I'm working towards that right now. Some other exciting news, is I'm learning a lot about when I did qualify for Boston, because I qualified for Boston, but what I didn't realize was that gives me an automatic entry into Chicago and into New York, and I didn't know that at the time. I thought it was like Boston. You qualify and you may or may not get in, but how it works is a lot of them are just lotteries. Boston, you can qualify, but then you still need to get accepted. And Chicago and New York, you have a guaranteed entry if you beat it. So Chicago's qualifying time is sub 250, and, my time hit it. So I have a guaranteed entry into Chicago. And then I luckily, we're touching on it, but I luckily got into the Tokyo lottery. And now I'm just really trying to focus in on, what 2026 is going to look like. I think that it's going to be a lot of adjustments and changes, because in December at CIM, if I can pull this 245 off, then I qualify for all of these races in 2027. And that would be the main goal. 2026, I would love to run Tokyo, Boston, and Chicago. If I don't get into Boston, I'm going to think about maybe trying to make New York happen. Financially, I don't know if I could, fit all of these races into 1 year, but I do know that, this is kind of the window in my life where I'm qualifying and things are happening, and it's time to make moves. So if I get into Boston, I'll do Boston, Chicago, and Tokyo. If I don't get into Boston, I'm going to decide if I want to do New York in 2026 or if I want to wait and do that in 2027 if I can qualify again.
Dude, that's badass, man. Super excited to see what happens, man. CIM, you're gonna go ham, dude. Heck yeah.
Yeah. I do think too, like, the exciting part about it too is, like, I never know what my next goal is. Like, that was one of the things that I was most fearful of once I qualified in Santa Rosa is I'm really goal oriented and I really like to be going after these things. So it was a weird feeling to hit that goal and not have what's next, like I really had to kind of sit back and take a moment for myself, and I am doing a run streak right now. So today's 629 days in a row of running. So for the first time ever, I follow my schedule, but after Santa Rosa, I told myself, I'm like, you know what? I'm taking a break, and what that break meant for me is on my run streak, I do a minimum of a mile a day. So that week, I just kept it around 1 to 2 miles a day. I think I honestly just did a tiny bit over a mile each day for a week, and it was so weird that week not having, what my next goal was in my head. So I think that that's where the world majors came into play, and I was like, you know what, like, there's 7 world majors. I've always wanted to kind of travel the world, and when I think of people getting into Boston, I think, wow, they're a fast runner. So that's like top priority, and I guess like that when you asked me to come on and do this podcast, I'm like, I think this is one of the things a lot of people don't know. Like, I qualified for Boston, and I have what, like a 5 minute and like 26 second like window or something. And then my coach told me, he said, don't start looking into the cutoffs or predictions because it's just going to mess with your head. And the first thing I did is go online and start looking at predictions. And it's like, they're predicting, well, when I say they, certain things I was reading was predicting that there's going to be a 5.5 minute to 6 minute cutoff for Boston on 2026. And if that's the case, then I may have missed it by 4 seconds. And it's almost like I would want to be upset, but then at the same time, it's like I get this little bit of excitement. Like I was saying, it's just the road of achieving it and the, day in, day out grind of getting there. And I think if I don't get in and they really do have that cutoff, then it's just going to motivate me to work even harder and get out there and keep trying. If I do get into Boston, don't get me wrong, I'm still going to grind and push. But it has been killing me to know if I'm going to get in or not. I know I should be finding out in this next week or week and a half. But it's been heavy on my mind. I think that Tokyo really just helped, clear my mind, because once I got that selected email for Tokyo, I was like, okay, I'm in a world major. We're going to be good no matter what. But Boston is really that real goal, It's funny telling people, oh, I qualified for Boston, and they're like, oh, well, how was it? And I'm like, oh, but I didn't actually get in. And they're like, no, but you qualified. But I didn't get accepted. Okay, but you just told me you qualified. I'm like, okay, nobody's really getting this. Maybe I shouldn't be telling people I'm qualifying, because I should just let them know if I get accepted or not,
No, I think just let them know, man. That's cool. You've been working really hard on that. So, last thing, you got any like shout outs you want to give people, or anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like any shout outs, it's just shout out to my family for being so supportive. Shout out to my wife for, allowing me to really do all this training and put in the work. Shout out to my coach for working with me. I know that in the past, like, I have my doubts about my running on what I can and can't do, and I think that having this circle in my life has been really helpful. Shout out to you. Shout out to anybody who's been willing to train with me. I'm one of those people who I really just train alone. I never run with friends. You were kind of the first person that I've ever trained with. With San Diego Track Club, I wouldn't show up to practices because I did have my coach, but I would show up to the races. I showed up to one San Diego Track Club practice. It was fun. But for me, my schedule is so tight that when I'm trying to fit in everything, I have to really pick and choose when I can get this in. So, you know, one of my best memories was that training block with you leading up to Roosters, you know. That was so much fun. You know, I've never done these night runs. We were meeting up, running throughout the night. We were running in the mornings. Like, we were running until I was so tired. Like, I literally just did nothing but just couldn't stop laughing. Like, I think that, you know, two of the funnest races I've ever done was Roosters and Pirates. And, you know, it was because of everybody who was there, you know. Like, Roosters, we had such a good group of guys, and we were all just holding each other. I went out there, and I think my goal, I can't even remember, was like 30 to 50 miles, and you just kept telling me, like, dude, we're doing 100, and I remember getting to 80, and we were all looking at each other, hurting, and I remember, like, telling you, like, I wasn't supposed to be running this long, like, we're fucking getting to 100, and you, like, looked at me, and you're like, no matter what, I'm getting you to a fucking 100, like, you knew it, I believed it, because I'm like, I just need to follow Tim right now. Jake was there. I remember, you know, shout out to him, just watching him. I remember at 80 thinking, like, I don't know if he's doing okay. I don't know what's going on. And then, you know, it's like, that's what I love about these ultras is we have these waves that go up and down. You know, 1 second we think we're going to drop and we can't do it. The next second we're on top of the world. And for me, I felt like I was in high school and I was like sneaking out of the house or something. Like I was doing something I wasn't supposed to, you know? We're just fucking up all night, running and running and running. And I'm over here, you know, farting and everyone's laughing. You're asking me if I'm shitting myself. I'm like throwing up on the sideline. You know, there's just so many things going on. I remember that was like one of my biggest fears is like, where are we going to go to the bathroom at this race?
The bushes,
I know I'm getting
the ice
off track,
plant.
but I guess I'm getting a little off track, but I guess where I'm going with this is, you know, shout out to you and everybody who's helped, you know, get me to these goals. And I truly believe that, you know, when I was a kid and I was kind of hanging around the wrong group and getting in trouble, your parents explain it to you. It's all about who you surround yourself with. And you know, the older I get, I realize how true it is. And I remember meeting you and just seeing these people who inspire me, you know, Andrew Glaze, David Goggins, you know, hearing all these stories. And it's all about who you surround yourself with. So I remember, you know, when me and you started kind of connecting and we're like, can we start training? When should we do this? I just remember telling myself, like, this is who I want to be like. He's, you know, hitting all these goals I would love to do, and now you're inviting me to come train with you. I'm going to surround myself with you. I'm going to just, you know, listen to your advice. I'm going to try to, you know, hang around these like-minded people, and I feel like that's been just the biggest help in all of this. San Diego Track Club, I've met some really fast guys, amazing people. You know, Dante, who won Santa Rosa Marathon last year, just the nicest dude ever. I'm talking to him, and he's like, I see he has a Santa Rosa jacket on. We're at San Diego Track Club, and I say, oh, you were at Santa Rosa Marathon. I was there. And he said, yeah, like, I won it. And in my head, I'm thinking, cool, like, dude won his age division. And he's like, yeah, like, I wanted to win the 5K, and then I wanted to win the marathon. So I did both. And once again, in my head, I'm like, all right, he must just be talking about age group. I start talking to people. He went out there. He took first place in the 5K. He took first place in the marathon. And then, you know, I'm in some of these races, and all of these guys who are this, like, elite and who are, you know, achieving these, I'm running next to. And don't get me wrong, I'm at the back of the pack, but I'm just grateful to be there. And, you know, I'm grateful to surround myself with these people that, you know, I aspire to be like. And it's, you know, same with you. Like, that is what was so fun about the ultra world is, you know, I see these guys reaching these goals, and I see you out there doing this, and you're like, what do you mean? Just come with me. Like, if you want to do it, then let's do it. There's not really how. It's let's show up. Let's put in the work. Let's do this, you know. Me and you were running in the morning. We were running all night. We were clocking our hours. We were, you know, doing exactly what the course was going to be like. And that's just really what I love. So my biggest advice for anybody getting into this is make sure you're surrounding yourself with, you know, like-minded people who have the same goal and who are going to uplift you. You know, life's too short to be with anybody who's going to doubt you, who's going to say you can't do this. I remember with my first marathon, I told someone like, "Oh, I'm doing 2 half marathons and a marathon this year," and they're like, "You can't do that. That's bad for your body. Like, there's no way you're going to be able to do that." So then the next day, I emailed the person over, and I want to say it was OC Marathon, and I was signed up for the half, and I said, "Can I transfer my ticket to the full?" And they were like, "Yeah." And I reached out to that person, and I said, "Okay, now I'm running a half marathon and 2 marathons this year." But, it's like, if I were to tell you, like, right now, like, "Hey, man, I'm thinking about running a 100-mile," and then 2 weeks later running another one, like, you would just be supportive and tell me how possible it is, Unlike some people who'd be like, "There's no fucking way, you can't do that." So, shout out to you and everybody else who's helped, bring me up and really helped me with this training, mentally and physically getting there.
Dude, yeah. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. It goes both ways, dude. Like, seeing you also hitting your goals and kind of sitting on the sideline and, like, cheering you on is super dope, man. And like I was saying in the beginning, it motivates me, like, seeing you're able to, have a family and just do all this awesome stuff. So, yeah, man. Well, good luck on CIM, and we'll hopefully be following along. We want to see what happens there if you hit that 245, and then you got to keep us updated on the Boston if you get in. So
yeah, no, I definitely will. And I'm gonna put you on the spot right now, but you've always been a faster runner than me, and going into OC, I was a little hesitant, and I know that you were motivating me, telling me that we both were going to do this, and what happened that day, there's, like I said, no excuses. I had a lot of learning to do from that marathon, but I really thought I was going to go and qualify for Boston at that race. You did, I didn't, and what you said about the qualifying times, I think it's time for us to maybe find a race, and I want us to run a race together, a world major, or at least something, because I know you can do it. I know you can do it. But I do understand that everybody's goals are different, and right now, you've just been fucking crushing it in the ultra world. It's been so cool watching these videos. I'm honestly jealous. I go online now and I'm watching your guys' videos of your race, and I'm like, fuck, man. Like, I wish I had, videos or reminders. Now I take a lot of my own, but watching you guys out there struggling and just putting in the work and coming out on top, it's so inspiring. I'm like, oh my gosh, one day I'll get there. I guess right now we're in kind of 2 separate spots. I'm focusing in on the marathons, and you're focusing in on winning all these ultras, and you're doing great. But with that being said, we are going to qualify again together. I really hope so. I definitely got your ticket for OC coming up in 2026 if you're willing to run it with me. But I actually just got that other ticket the other day, so I'll be getting that code, and hopefully we can run it again.
Are we actually going to race this time, or? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm going to try to actually hold on. This time I won't fall behind. What was I? I was like 10, 11 minutes behind you, like
something like that. But
bro,
I'm actually gonna go for Carlsbad Marathon in January.
Okay.
I'm going for it again. I want to try and hit like.
All right.
You know what, dude? I'm not even gonna put a time on it. I'm just gonna go out and send it. I think I did go out a little hot at OC, but I'm just gonna be smarter this time.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. I might want to look into it. I want to see. I've got so much going on in 2026. I want to check out my schedule and see. Maybe worst I can at least come in and cheer you on. But I already, I'm not even gonna say good luck with it, because I already know you're gonna do it and you're gonna blow it out of the water. I want to see you. I want to see you keep beating me, so we could keep just competing back and forth.
Heck yeah, man. Well, thanks for coming on, man. Yeah. We'll see you, have you on another time. Thanks, Jason.
Definitely. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to come and chat. Hopefully someone gets something from this, a little inspiration. At the end of the day, I guess the last thing what I'll leave it with is, it doesn't matter about pace. It doesn't matter about distance. I think that, anybody can do this, and I think that the running community is such an open and, good place to be. I encourage anybody to get out there and get some miles in, whether it's a 20-minute mile, 30-minute mile, 5-minute mile. Just get out there and get after it. The one thing that I've learned in this running community, unless like you're a really competitive runner, nobody's going to ask you your time. If you tell someone you ran a 5K, a 10K, a half, a full, I don't think I've ever had anybody come back with, well, what was your time? Unless they're a competitive runner. So, I think it's really cool what you're doing here with this podcast, and I hope it really motivates people to get out there. Everyone's running the same amount of distance in these races. Fuck the time. We're all traveling that same amount of distance, and I think that's awesome.
Awesome, man. All right, well, thanks again, Jason, and we will see you guys on the next episode.
Thank you.